Welcome to Overeducated and Underemployed. We got a great episode this week. Just a quick reminder, I'll be at Flicker Bar next week on Tuesday, the 18th. And I'll be at Birds on Wednesday, the 19th in Tallahassee. So come see some stand-up. Hit that subscribe button. A lot more of y'all are listening than are subscribed. I appreciate that. But we got a lot of great episodes coming your way. This week is no exception. I sat down and talked to Jason Thrasher. Jason Thrasher is a photographer, an author. He's done music videos. He's a videographer. He did the Ghost and Most Drive-By Truckers music video. He did the Go-Go Boots episodes. He's done portraits of Drive-By Truckers, Guided by Voices, R.E.M, Outcast, Against Me, Widespread Panic, and the Elephant Six Collective. He's been published in Rolling Stone, Photo District News, Billboard, New York Magazine, the New York Times, Bitter Southerner, Entertainment Weekly, Paste, Salon, Pitchfork, Garden & Gun, and Spin Magazine. He's done promotional photography for New West, ATO, Anti Records, Warner Brothers Records, Razor & Tie, Polyvinyl. And that's not even all that we talk about, because he also went to India a couple of times throughout his life. And we had an amazing conversation about all of that as well. I hope you enjoy my talk with Jason Thrasher. He's an amazing person. Just one of those people that really drew you in. We joked he might also be most famously known as the father of artist Frances Thrasher, who we've had on the podcast. We joked that he's been recognized as her father like twice recently, or 3 times, or something like that. Yeah, he's just an amazing guy. I really enjoyed talking to him. I hope you enjoyed listening to it.
I can't claim I'm working pretty well, but I'm not going to go and say overeducated.
And I've had a couple of people, at first they were like, I don't know if I should be on that podcast. I'm pretty well employed. I don't want to piss off my I'm like, no, I'm the underemployed one. Yeah, that's why I'm going around talking.
I'm fully booked. I would like to raise the bar of what I'm doing. So underutilized, let's say.
Well,
Usually educated and underutilized.
We're on Overeducated and Underemployed.
Nice.
I'm with Jason Thrasher. He's a photographer, author. I don't know, the list is probably longer than that, but those are the things that you're probably most known for.
I think it's funny when I get called an author. I'll take it.
Oh, yeah.
My writer friends laugh.
Yeah. That's just because they had to earn it.
Yeah.
They feel like you didn't, I guess.
Like, he just takes pictures.
Yeah. You did interviews too, right?
Yeah, I've done some. I'm working on my new book, my India book, and I've had to actually spell some words and put it together.
Oh, wow.
Write some chapters.
See, they're not going to be able to laugh for too long.
No, not for long.
Yeah. One of the things that you primarily photograph are people, and one of the types of people is musicians.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask you the same question that I ask musicians when I have them on here. And what's the first song that you remember loving as a kid? And it doesn't have, obviously, you might not remember the first one you loved. So
go way back. I got to go way. The first song I remember loving, I grew up in Alabama in the 70s, and the first records I remember, Kiss Destroyer was the first album I had. And actually, Patterson Hood and I called our production company when we started doing music videos for the truckers, we called it Destroyer Easter Bunny.
Okay.
Because there's a photograph of me on Easter morning holding the Kiss Destroyer record I guess it came out in 76, I was 6. And my sister is standing next to me, and the only reason I know it's Easter morning is because she's holding a brand new Easter bunny.
Oh, wow.
So the Easter bunny, my parents were rad enough to give me the Kiss Destroyer for Easter. And I can't remember what songs are on that album, but I remember that being my first, vinyl.
And with Kiss, you don't even have to play it backwards to get the satanic message.
Yeah, that cover got me. That cover, yeah. And then as far as songs, I remember I loved Queen early on. And but before that, I don't remember a specific song where I was like, that's the one. I do remember at some point, I don't know when the Centerfold came out by the Jay Giles Band, but I remember buying that 45 at Kmart and turning it backwards in the packaging so my mom wouldn't read that it said Centerfold. But I think that was a little later.
Do you remember what it was about Kiss that like first attracted you to them?
The album covers.
The album covers,
Yeah, I mean, the album covers, and then it just seemed dangerous.
That's what it was for me with the Truckers. I saw the Dirty South album cover.
Yeah.
And
Good album cover goes a long freaking way.
I had no idea who they were. I was working at a record store, and it was going to be on a listening post. So we had a bunch of promo comics laying around. So I just took one home, and the next day I bought all their albums.
Yeah. The Truckers, for me, it was, I don't know if it was the album cover that got me, but I just up from Alabama, so I grew up in Huntsville, and I was not into that band. I didn't know the band at all. I think I'd seen the name around town, but I got hired to shoot Rebecca's wedding, and she was marrying this musician guy, and I didn't know anything about them, and got to meet Patterson on his wedding day.
So that was your introduction to okay, that's interesting. That's why.
So I didn't know them at all, and it was, I think, either they gave me the Dirty South or I got it right after the wedding. I remember sitting in this parking lot at this Earth Fair, and Putting People on the Moon came on, and I hit repeat, and I was like, what the fuck?
That's exactly what happened to me too, dude.
Yeah.
I got home that night, and 4 songs in, the 4th track, Putting People on the Moon, I just put it on repeat for like an hour.
I was like, this guy should be the poet laureate of Alabama. Yeah, I was an instant fan at that point.
Hell yeah. No, that was it for me too.
Yeah.
Man. That record, that song.
Yeah, so we were a little late to that game, but
I was 18.
oh,
So I feel
I was in Athens, so I should have known.
I feel like I was as like early as I could have been and really understood what was going on. Maybe a couple of years earlier, but
That whole time period is definitely in the period where like the Southern Rock Festival came out in 2001. So Beth and I met in '99 and left Athens in 2000. I missed the first Glance record coming out.
Yeah.
And then came back, and we were running a company. Bought a house. We were renovating a house. We had started our family. So it was this whole time period, probably 2000 to 2006, where I really wasn't paying attention to what was going on in Athens.
yeah.
I was just trying to figure out how to make a living.
Let's back up a bit, because I think my first introduction to you was probably like the Go-Go Boots episodes, which I guess I forgot to mention documentarian earlier as well. But let's back up a little bit. So you're into Kiss as a kid.
Yeah.
Did you ever like
And the Village People?
The
All
Village
good
People
album
and
covers.
Queen and-
Yeah. That album, just colorful album covers.
But did you ever dabble in trying to play anything or sing or anything like that? Was that anything of interest?
There was a point in high school where I thought, maybe I'll get a bass and try to learn to play bass. And that was a joke. I have zero musical skills.
I did the exact same thing in middle school for like 6 months. I picked up a bass and joined a band.
Not
and
easier. It just felt like
there's less
count the
strings.
strings.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the way in. Yeah.
I feel like it's like if you're in a band of completely unskilled people, it's easy. It's like easier to blend in if you have no skill on a bass.
So I was like, just be loud.
Yeah.
But it didn't work at all. We actually made up a band called the Hoovers because we sucked. I really could. The guy that could actually play in the band just looked at me like, this ain't gonna work.
Man, that's too bad because the band name's pretty great. That's awesome.
And the funny, I don't think any of the people in that band, because it wasn't a band, but any of the 3 of us that were in that band went on to be musicians.
Yeah. I mean,
Failures.
I think that's one thing. I've talked to a lot of musicians on this podcast, but I've also talked to a lot of people that kind of do the jobs that a lot of people don't really think about in the music industry, in whether it's photographers, people making album art. I've talked to King Stanley, who he like rents out drums to the Georgia Theater. He's a drummer in a lot of bands, including Cosmic Charlie, but he also makes a lot of money just like renting out drums to touring bands that don't want to bring backlining drums. So there's all kinds of different things. Where did you realize that you could, all right, I suck at playing bass. Like I'm not a musician, but I love this shit. Yeah. I want to be part of it. How did you find your way? How did you navigate that?
Well, it wasn't really something I was thinking about at all.
Okay.
Right? I always just took pictures of my friends' bands, but that was if they happened to have $100 and afford to buy the film. And
right. Back then there was like an investment involved.
Yeah. I'm coming up out of graduated high school in '89 in Alabama, and then moved to Birmingham. And I had friends that were musicians, and I wasn't really thinking about being a music photographer at all. That wasn't a goal. That wasn't a thing that I really pictured. It wasn't really, if I had early on wanted to do that, I probably would have gone a lot farther with it, but it wasn't the dream. I wanted to be a gallery artist and do my own thing, and the musician portraits, that was just like favors for friends.
Interesting.
It wasn't something I really pursued in any kind of way. There was a band called Lova Nova in Birmingham that hired me early on to do some photos. There was a band Remy Zero, and they seemed like they were very huge, and they were friends of mine at that time.
I heard that band.
And so I did some photographs with them. They weren't very good photographs. and then I left Birmingham. I came to Athens, and it was because of the music and the art scene, and because of people like James Herbert, who was doing things for R.E.M, like videos, and Jim Cohen, the filmmaker. Mm-hmm. But I was more interested in art school, and art school was not a place where they encouraged something like music photography at all. That was not even a conversation. Those weren't even images that were being shown to us in art school. It was more documentary work, or just street photography, or the classics.
So what were some of your really early interests when you first got into photography?
Those people like Robert Mapplethorpe, so I really responded to his portraits.
Yeah, I love that book, that Just Kids.
Yeah. So
Patti Smith.
I didn't know art existed. I grew up in Alabama, not from Huntsville, it's a smart town, but I didn't grow up going to museums or looking at art books or art. And luckily, when I was 18, 19, I won placed in a skateboarding contest and got to go out to Arizona for the finals.
Okay.
And while we were in Arizona, we bought a car because we couldn't rent a car. We were too young to rent a car, so we bought a car for $300. Like 4 of us chipped in $75, $80 each, $100, whatever each person had. And we bought a car and decided to drive to Los Angeles from Phoenix. And the car broke down in the desert. We ended up hitchhiking to LA. With the Tijuana, bought LSD, came back to LA, skateboarding around Hollywood and Sunset, like tripping our minds out. Mm-hmm. And we go into this bookstore, an art bookstore, and I saw art books for the first time at 19 and saw photographs.
And you were tripping at the time too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't really remember what photography books I saw, but I really remember looking at those MC Escher books.
Yeah. I've spent some time with my MC Escher book.
But there were a lot of art books, and I remember that night I was like, that's what I want to do. And it was fine art photography. And then when I get back to Alabama, luckily, crazily, there was a bookstore, a Barnes & Noble kind of bookstore in Huntsville, Alabama, that had a really great art section. And they even had like the Mapplethorpe books with all the great stuff in Huntsville, Alabama. So I'm sitting there looking at these like incredibly erotic like Mapplethorpe portraits, and Ansel Adams and Annie Leibovitz, and I don't know who else at that time, but it was still like I never had anybody encourage me to do any of this stuff, and I didn't really know what it was or how it worked or how you got to that place to be able to do that kind of work. But I moved to Birmingham, and I was starting photography school, and I remember getting Patti Smith's horses, and I recognized that it was a Mapplethorpe without looking at it. Maybe I had seen the Patti Smith, maybe I don't know, but I was like, holy shit, like this musician knew this photographer. And I put that together. So that was like the moment, and then I started imitating that style of photography with friends of mine at the time, and doing like portraits and like studio lighting, and really just kind of fantasy stuff, nudes with bathing caps and nude backs with like wings, and just really what was art, supposed to look like art, or sepia tone prints. And I did my first exhibition at 22 or 23 years old in Birmingham, and my grandson, I sold almost everything. And I was like, oh shit, like, you pay me $300 for that? Yeah. And about the same time, I was getting really tired of, the shit was hitting the fan for me in Birmingham. There was a bad breakup, and I wanted to get out of Birmingham, and I ended up moving to Athens because of the art scene. I knew the music scene, but when I found out that like Jim Herbert taught at the art school, like that's where I want to go. I want to go study art with this guy. Even though he had known for a lot of the work he did in music, he was still like an artist doing his own thing, like his own art films and his own paintings, and the music videos were just like his side hustle, just something he did as favors for his friends, really. I think in his later years, he doesn't even want to talk about that stuff. He just wants to talk about the paintings. So became my main mentor. So it was always a little bit of, okay, we're artists. And in Athens, everybody's either an artist or musician. So my immediate friends in Athens were people like Jucifer, the Starroom Boys. I think Jucifer was the first band I photographed in Athens, and they were just a couple of kids I worked with at the Grit. And then I think the Starroom Boys actually had a record deal, so they hired me to do some photos because I knew what I was doing. And Meth was in that band at that time. There's a portrait.
Talking to him on Sunday.
Oh, cool. So there's a portrait of the Starroom Boys hanging in Manhattan still that was shot in Manhattan. That was one of the first prints from my Athens work.
Nice.
And then my first paid job was actually photographing R.E.M. the night they signed my first real paid job. Like it was more than covering the cost of the film because they had to use flash. I got hired. My buddy Kevin worked for R.E.M. and they were apparently needed a last minute. They decided they needed a photographer to photograph them signing the record deal back in '96 with Warner Brothers. So I got hired to go to their manager's house, First Sound's house, and photographed them signing this incredible record deal. And I was like hugely in over my head, and pulled the 4 band members aside really nervously and asked if I could do a picture of the 4 of them. And I think I shot 2 frames.
How often do you try and get yourself into those situations where you're like in over your head?
Oh, I am over my head right in a second.
I feel like that's the only way to live.
Yeah. The way I work is I did a photo shoot this morning with Eric Bachman and his new band, and they met me right here, 10 o'clock this morning. We had 0 plan. They 5 of them come in, like, where should we go? Like, which direction is the compass pointing? It's like middle of the morning, bright sun, not a cloud in the sky, the worst possible lighting scenario. And we just head out, driving out towards Commerce, hoping to see something inspiring. And I go about 5-10 miles, and there's nothing. I got like a car following me, 5 people, and it's just hoping that we're gonna find. And then we saw this one kind of thing that might work. We turned around, went back to it, and had a great shoot. Tons of good stuff. The old concrete factory where they make all the concrete sculptures.
So you just follow your nose.
Yeah, just totally follow it and just follow the light.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew the word was which way's the barometer pointing. Let's go, and like hope for the best. And then after an hour and a half, we had probably 10 different great setups.
That's awesome.
Good stuff. We got pictures of Eric Bachman on a hillside with a concrete deer silhouetted from the morning light.
That's wild.
Not something I would have ever got through again, but it was like an amazing shot.
I can't wait to see that.
Yeah,
it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, so it's always just kind of what's going to happen. I've done that with the Truckers and many other bands. Sometimes it's really thought out and we have a plan, or go out and scope some locations, but that doesn't even really work for me. It's just, the light might not be good at that point, or just find a spot and hope for the best.
While we're on the topic, what's your approach in terms of socially, or like with the interaction between you and the artist when you are photographing, like when you're photographing like a live event, but when you're doing something like what you did with Eric Bachman this morning, or when you're doing these staged.
I think I'm just a joker. I'm just joking around, just trying to disarm people and have fun. I think it's fun that we all come away feeling like it was a good time, and we can hopefully catch something spontaneous, something soulful and real. There is an idea that has hit on me in India a couple years ago that photography is a big energy exchange. It's kind of like what we're doing right now. We're sitting here talking, we're looking at each other, and we're sharing this energy. And I really feel like my best photographs happen when that real back and forth thing is happening. It's harder on something I did this morning. It was 5 of us, and we're working really fast. But when I do portraits with just like you or one person, and you're sitting still, you're really just hoping there's something that goes in, hits the soul, and comes back.
Yeah. One of my first exposures to like music photography I was probably like 15, and more than just seeing it in the album art or whatever, but my aunt was living in Seattle, and the Experience Music Project at the time, I think it's called something else now, but it's at the base of the Space Needle. And Annie Leibovitz, you mentioned her earlier, her American Music show was on, and you got a headset, and you would walk around each photograph and scan the little thing or type in the number, and it was her telling you about the photo shoot. And I don't remember word for word, but she said something very similar when she met with John Cash, and took some of the last photos of him alive, I think, actually. Those photos of him on porch that she took. And that it was like, I really just wanted to try and get him to be himself.
Yeah. Especially when you're working with somebody who's been photographed a million times.
Yeah.
And she's another other level there. She's a celebrity in her own right. So
Sure.
somebody like John Cash, he was probably aware of who she is. And
Yeah.
there's people that have been photographed a lot, and they know what they're doing, or they put a wall up. And so it really is just about connecting and finding out, or having them give you something honest.
Yeah. And I'm thinking back, just funny, I remember that was my first introduction to the North Mississippi All-Stars too, was they're in that American Music, but she had the wherewithal to photograph them way back.
Oh, cool.
In 2002 or whenever that was.
Wow.
And yeah,
I've never seen her photograph of them.
It's in the American Music book.
Oh.
If you have that book,
I don't have the book.
I highly recommend. I'm sure it's available still somewhere.
Yeah. It's funny, like,
I love that
she's
book.
a bigger influence than I've ever really thought about. Sure, what I do.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about your photographs of the All-Stars and her photograph of the All-Stars that I've seen, and they have a similar just like feel. I don't know how to describe it, but there's a reason I thought of that photo. I was sitting here talking to you, and it's because it reminds me they're a lot younger than the photographs especially the recent photographs you've taken of the All-Stars. But
Let's see if it comes up on the first try. There's her from the wall, so it must be on that wall. I don't want to dwell too long. I'll look it up later, but I love those guys. I think I've shot them 2 or 3 times, and they're definitely some guys that come in with that, like, just honesty and warmth.
they've always seemed like such genuine people, and I've seen them in big venues and festivals and everything, in small venues like little bars, and they play the same no matter. They play like they're playing to 10,000 people when they're playing to 150 people. I feel like they give it their all in everything they do.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And here in the studio, I told you earlier that since we're on campus, they were the first band to photograph in the studio when we first opened this place 4 years ago.
Yeah. I was just looking at those photos earlier because that was after Chris had passed and they got a new bass player.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that wasn't North Miss All-Stars. That was just something Luther and Cody were doing together.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't All-Stars.
Gotcha. Anyway, I'm gonna jump back to where we were on the timeline a little bit. You moved to Athens. You're in school at this point for fine art at UGA.
Yep.
And you're getting hired to photograph R.E.M.
Yeah, that was a fluke. I mean, there wasn't a follow-up job. That was the job.
So when was the next one then? Like, when did you start? And I don't mean just music. When did you start?
There wasn't one. I think that must have been 96 or 7 when that happened. And I was deep in art school, and I was working at the Globe, checking IDs at the door, and I was washing dishes at my friend Hassan's restaurant, American Express, and I was working at this restaurant, Guaranteed, mostly at those restaurants for trade for food, for alcohol. And then
You sound like a comedian.
yeah, and I told you that last time I saw you. My daughter asked me if I could have any other job as a photographer and stand-up comic.
Yeah. I performed for free drinks last night.
Yeah, there you go.
Founders.
Yeah, so I was just getting by. I was making art. I was traveling back to Alabama a lot to photograph a series I was working on at the time called Gold State. So I was going to Gadsden, Alabama, and I was doing a photo series based on my family without photographing my family. So it was a lot of people that reminded me of my family and kind of metaphorical or symbolic of who we were and who I am or was at the time.
What was the like the drive to do a project like that, where it was like personal but not personal?
Yeah, for me, it's always, the art has always, the projects, the good ones all have to have a personal angle. It has to tell the story of who I am on this planet, or it's not, I don't want to do it. I'm not a journalist, and I'm not really a documentary photographer, but I want to be an artist, and there's a little bit of documentary, but I'm not afraid to like tell fictions.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily factual. So that's what I was really getting into at the time, was like finding, my two favorite photographs from that time period were one of an old, probably older than now than he was at the time, but this old man at this bar in Alabama that I photographed. He was in this Bill's Lounge, this neighborhood strip club, bar, morning coffee shop in the outskirts of Gadsden, Alabama. And it was literally a coffee shop in the morning, and then at some point during the day, the waitresses would start dancing, and it would turn into like a strip club. So I went in one morning to get coffee, and I met this guy named Harlan. And I've always known that alcoholism ran in my family. I'm like 13 years sober now, but I even knew at that time, at 26 years old, that alcohol was an issue. And I remember this guy telling me he was sober, and his job was moving houses. And I photographed him against the bar, and then the ultimate became a diptych. There were two photographs, one of Harlan, who I saw as the older version of me, the older sober guy. It's funny, how old did I say I was?
You didn't say how old. You said that you were probably older than he was at the time.
I got sober at 42, so I wonder how old he was. But so I always saw him as the older me. And then there was a young skateboarder that I photographed, like down at Dothan, Alabama. And so that was like, this was like this like tiger-eyed young kid with the sun hitting the sweat in his eyes. So that was just like, there's two large prints. It was like the young me and the older me. And then there were like photographs of like houses being moved down the highway that were just like out of focus. They were just like shot with a too slow shutter speed, so there was some action. And then there's like older folks hanging outside some bars, like a dried up old alcoholic, or this old man with a sledgehammer that I had met that used to play poker with my grandfather. So it was just like from my grandparents' neighborhoods and things that related to that. So that was what I was really trying to do. I wasn't thinking about music photography. I was just thinking about like these narratives and how to tell stories about where you're from and what the South was about.
Do you mind talking about your alcoholism a little bit more?
No, I already brought it up.
All right, cool.
It's a big part of the story. The joke a long time ago that my camera was an extension of my drinking arm.
I'm wondering how you think it affected your work, both when you were drinking and now that you're not. Like what the shift you saw was.
Big deal. The other one was the pot. Like I was a big pothead, and I always thought that I was like organized and had my shit together until I got sober. I looked at my archives and realized it was just like chaos.
Yeah.
Back then, I always struggled with the idea. I had an uncle, family members who were alcoholics. Luckily, my father stopped drinking for the last 8 or 9, 10 years of his life. And if he hadn't, he would have died of COVID 5 years ago. So he got an extra 5 years out of his life by being sober. But so I always knew alcohol was an issue. I always fought it. I drank a lot. Those early days in college, I was definitely drinking and smoking a lot of weed. And it didn't get in the way of me making the photographs, but it definitely got in the way of me having a career around those photographs.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's a funny, I tell the story, but like in 2008, when I was definitely, I gave up alcohol in 1999, New Year's Eve, 2000, right, the millennium. I gave up alcohol and didn't drink for 8 years, and I smoked weed that whole time. But in 2007 or 8, I started drinking again, and shortly after that, we went out to Los Angeles, and I had been doing all this music. I started doing all this music work already, so I went out and I was visiting Warner Brothers and looking at, trying to get work in LA, and found a gallery that wanted to show my work. 2008. And this gallery is like, yeah, we'll show this NASCAR work of yours. And that's 2008, and I got sober.
That was Talladega, right?
Talladega. We were having the wildest party in NASCAR. 2012, when I got sober, I found the prints in my basement that I had made but never sent to the gallery in LA.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what pot did for me. Was it didn't get in the way of making the pictures, but it got in the way of the career happening around those pictures of that time period.
That's It's interesting to me that you had this like self-awareness that it was like problematic.
Yeah, and it was part of the series. The series was about alcoholism in a way.
Yeah.
When I went to, part of my big story was going to India, and that was right after college, and that was in response to a time period where I was drinking too much and some chaos was developing around my life, and I basically, the joke that people asked why I was in India, it was to grow up, was the funny story, but really all I really needed to do was get sober.
Yeah.
But instead I did this, journey through the other side of the planet. Sober. But I wasn't drinking during that time period much. I cleared up and was focused on Buddhism and traveling and making art in India, and I feel like it was the best pictures I've ever made at that point.
Did you ever feel like you hit like a bottom, or was it just something that you?
Yeah, I hit the bottom. I say in my version of alcoholism, the bottom was a very soft bottom.
Yeah,
because I didn't lose everything, but I could have. And at that time period, no, the bottom was I didn't have anything to lose.
Is that the motivation though for getting sober, or
the first time I quit drinking was when I met my wife.
Okay.
So Beth she didn't drink, and we went on our first date after that trip to India, and I was 3 drinks in on our third restaurant or bar we'd gone to before I realized she wasn't drinking. And I was like, by the end of the night, I was like, you don't drink, do you? And we quickly fell in love, and I gave up alcohol like on New Year's Eve. What's that, like 6 weeks into our dating, I gave it up. I can't believe she actually dated me for 6 weeks while I was drinking. It was probably under control at that time period because it was after India. Like I would say the 6 months before India, which was 98, to like when I was meeting Beth, the alcoholism was not like full blown. I was on a Buddhist track. I was doing yoga. I was working really hard on my art, and I don't think the drinking was huge at that point. But I did give up alcohol when I met Beth, and then went 8 years without touching it, and did smoke the weed, and got my business started, my career going, and started working with the bands and truckers, and it was somewhere along 2007, 2008 that it all started to pile up with 2 kids and the pressures of family and life, and just remember walking in the kitchen on Christmas at her mother's house, and they were all drinking, not bad, but her family. And I just turned up a bottle of wine.
Did it feel like it was a coping thing at the time, or
it was definitely coping?
But were you aware of that, or were you
it's something? No, party. Well, it was the most fun I'd had at her parents' house, but it was definitely a coping thing. And then, I don't want to get into all the details.
No, sure.
But then 4 years later, it's not fun anymore. It wasn't funny, and the funny thing that's not funny was when the 8 years I was just smoking pot and not drinking, it wasn't that bad. But when I started drinking and I was smoking the pot, all of a sudden it was like, this is not good.
Gotcha.
There was maybe a couple of years where it was fun, and that's really the time period I was shooting all the bands. Like I started shooting truckers right after Patterson and Rebecca's wedding. I think it was for Brighter Than Creation Dark was the first thing I shot with those guys, the Spooner.
Yeah,
and
sounds right.
Yeah, and then and as soon as I worked with those guys, at that point I had lost my way as an artist. I had been doing things like skateboarding a ton. I helped build a skate park here in Athens, and all my creative energy was going towards skateboarding. I wasn't really thinking about being an artist. I didn't know how to be an artist anymore. I lost my way, like in the parenthood and the home ownership. I didn't know what to say, what to do as a creative person. I was shooting weddings for a living. I was doing a fucking shitload of weddings. Like at some point I got to 40 or 50 a year.
Did that feel like what a band
Soul
probably
crushing.
feels like, playing a bunch of weddings, like just
soul crushing?
Yeah,
I love shooting weddings. Like I'm still doing them, but I'll never do 40 or 50 a year again. And at that point, I didn't have any other way to make a living. I didn't know how else to do this in Athens, like how else to support a new family.
Well, it's different when you get to be selective about which weddings you do.
I'll do anybody that wants to pay me, I'm happy to do it. And weddings are fun. I will go down fighting. Weddings are fun. It is a great business.
Yeah.
And the reason I chose weddings, there were a lot of other directions a photographer could go, and a lot of photographers like shit on the idea of being a wedding photographer. But what's great about wedding photography presented itself to me in India in 1998. I'm sitting there in India. The only job I'd ever shot was for R.E.M. It's the only time I'd ever really been paid. to do a job. I wasn't trying to be a commercial photographer. I didn't want to be a commercial photographer. I wanted to be an artist. Right. I'm going to starve to death and I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to do my own fucking thing and that's it. And then I'm going to go to grad school and I'm probably going to teach was the plan. But in India, I'm sitting there and I had started racking up a little bit of a credit card while I was in India. And a friend of mine had asked me to shoot her wedding right before I left for India. And I did it. And she had to ask me like 3 times. And I finally did it. And I made some money. And actually I did 2 right before I went to India. One of them was the first gay Jewish wedding, the first gay wedding I ever shot in 1990. And I only did it because it was a gay wedding. I was like, that sounds fun. There's this gay Jewish wedding in Atlanta. And they paid me really well. And so that money helped get me to India. So I'm sitting there in India thinking, how am I going to make a living? How am I going to support myself as an artist? And it was like, I've said this many times, but the joke was like, Buddha or God was like, go all and photograph weddings. And the only reason that, and what I learned was, or realized was the only way I'm not going to make a living is because of my ego. And it's the ego that's, I'm not going to shoot a wedding. I'm too good to do that. I'm an artist. Like, yeah. I'm not, it's all ego.
Yeah.
So then I came back and I got asked to do a wedding and I was like, cool, $2,000, great. I hadn't made that much money in a year at that point.
So one kind of ego death got you into fine art.
Yeah, then it killed the soul. It didn't really, weddings were great. I've loved weddings from, so I shot 500 of them. There was a time period around 2010 where I just couldn't do it anymore. I was doing so many. And and that was also when after I started drinking. So it coincided with that. I never thought about that. But that was when all of a sudden 2010 I was like, crushed. But anyway, so I got into the weddings. It's a great way. And what I loved about the weddings was it was a way to make a living with photography that was not selling out. You're not making art for a corporation. You're not making images for Coca-Cola or for some big advertising firm. It was all about something that somebody would appreciate.
And in a lot of cases, it's like the happiest people are going to be in this for a long time.
Yeah, there's some stress to it. But yeah, the work had legitimate, soulful reasons to exist.
You're drinking, you're doing wedding photography. And is that the only thing you're having to do to pay the bills at this point?
At that point, weddings was my business. And then I helped build the Athens skate park. So it was this time period where it was like, we're building a skate park, renovating a house, shooting really weddings. Who am I now? I don't know what I'm doing anymore as an artist. I'm just literally completely lost as an artist. And then I shot Patterson and Rebecca's wedding. And then our first children were due the same day. And Patterson has told the story that his wedding reception was so good that 4 children were conceived that night. And he literally pointed to me from the stage and told the story. He goes, even our photographer knocked up his wife that night. So Eli and Francis were due on the same day.
So he's responsible for his own album cover.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all in the family. So we got to know those guys through like playgroup and off. And I had known Rebecca for years at that point. Hanging out at the playgroup, and we're sitting around the playground with his little babies. And the first photo I did with the truckers was the day that Isabel left, and had a band photo today. And it was, the band was Skater. And that was the first time, so I never got to shoot Jason. So that was the first time I had met the rest of the band and photographed. I guess I met them at the wedding, but I shot the truckers with Spooner. And got great stuff, and then went straight into working on that record, did a ton of stuff. We did a video for, my first music video ever was for Ghost to Most.
Okay. And I don't think I realized that you had done that music video. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I still think it's one of my favorite music videos.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. I love that video.
Yeah. What I love about that video was the phone call I got from Cooley after we finished it, and he called me, and I was in an airbrush t-shirt shop in Panama City with a family, and I get this phone call from Cooley, and he's like, man, I didn't know what that song was about, so I saw the video.
Yeah, I love that.
So from that point on, I was like all in on the bands and the music and doing that stuff, and I started getting calls because of the trucker stuff. I was either a favor for a friend, I started working with like Don Chambers, and anybody in Athens that I'd known for years and loved. Next thing I was making photographs. And I was getting, because of the trucker stuff, getting calls from bigger acts that were coming through Athens, like the Northwest All-Stars, or did a trip to LA to try to like make some connections with people I knew, and got like Against Me out of that, and Cracker, which is funny because David was here, but
yeah,
Cracker when I was in Los Angeles. And
I'm talking to Brian soon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think next month we're gonna.
Yeah,
he's gonna come on.
The guy's got a great voice. He's done some voiceover work for me.
Oh, really?
Some videos. We've
Yeah,
done.
he does a lot. He does quite a bit of that.
Yeah. So I'm not going to name the company because the company they're gone. It wasn't great company, but he was my voice in this company for a while.
Nice.
Yeah, he's great. And so then it was really like, 2007 to 2012, just an avalanche of me shooting bands and music. And
And at what point in there did you get sober again?
2012.
So you're drinking at that point, but were you drinking like while you're shooting the band,
Oh,
like
yeah,
at the
yeah.
show?
Yeah.
It's the party, right? It's a party.
Yeah, I'm out till 2 or 3 in the morning. Kids at home, like not being responsible, but having a blast. But it enabled me to break out of just being a wedding photographer, which was really killing me by that point. I didn't want to be known for my wedding photography. I just wanted to get paid. And shoot those jobs. And somehow in the music stuff also, I started getting more like day-to-day commercial stuff. And I do think working with bands and so many Athens icons has helped me stand out in the Athens community as an artist and a photographer. So I get hired because people like my photograph of Panic, I'll get a wedding, or I'll shoot a wedding because the couple met at a drive-by trucker show, or somebody at GA is a music fan and they know my work. Snowball from there.
Right.
But there became a dark side to the music work for me. Not just the alcohol part, but the soul part. I got really frustrated. You can only shoot like so many weddings without getting a little tired of shooting weddings, and you can only shoot so many groups of 5 guys lined up against a cool backdrop without getting sick of shooting 5 guys lined up against the backdrop.
Yeah.
And then having their record labels use things in ways that you weren't hoping, that choosing the image you didn't want to use, or then sending one out to a magazine without having you retouch it. And it's like you said, this small J mag, what are you doing? So there's a lot of frustrations even in that. No matter how cool that was, it was still like, this is still what I ultimately realized, it was still commercial photography. It wasn't my art.
But you're always someone, I think, that also has really tried to invest in the community here.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's part of why
There were so many people invested in me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned it briefly, you built the skate park here.
Yeah.
You've done a book about Athens.
That's what I was getting to. So Athens Potluck was my answer to being burnt out on shooting bands. So I wanted to focus on individuals, and I wanted to do something for myself on music. I wanted to do something that was personal on music and about Athens and not about the bands.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was the whole way into Athens Potluck. And Beth was the one that had the idea that for months I was trying to figure out how to do this book about Athens. There was an idea that would be this book of all my band work, and then I had to go find some bands and shoot some bands. I was like, I never got to shoot R.E.M as a full band other than that party, but that picture's not something for that. Or I never got to shoot B-52s. I did shoot Pylon, luckily, but there's a bunch of people I didn't shoot, or a lot of history I didn't have. So then it became this big conversation with like UJ Press and Flagpole that I'd be a curator of a book. And I go and find, and I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I just want to photograph individuals because I like doing portraits, my main thing, and that's what I'm best at. And then Beth had the idea that if I shot the first person, then that person could pick the next person. And that was the missing link, was that's how we could journey through Athens and tell the story that like the legends don't have to be picked, and it can still work. Michael Stipe was ultimately picked, but even if he hadn't been, there's still references to R.E.M in the book, and there's references to B-52s, and there's references to...
Well, it made it have a life of its own in a way that...
So Potluck was my way to do something personal, doing an art project on the music scene. And that was really where I found myself as an artist again. And as I was shooting Potluck was probably 2 years into it, 2.5 years into it when I got sober. And at that point I was really frustrated with shooting bands. I was like, I've done enough. It starts to be the same thing after a while. And then I really had lost interest in shooting live shows or much else even going out to live shows. Like I don't really go out that much. But I started getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning and just got lit. I'm just going to be an artist. I want to do my thing again. I want to find stories to tell that are personal. And I started working on the Murmur Chessel project and digging into Athens Potluck and finishing that project. That took from 2000. I came out in 2017. So that's 5 years right there after, all.
You think you would have finished the book without getting sober?
No way.
Yeah.
No way, because of the process of getting the book done, both books, neither book would exist, because the process of getting the books done required full focus, like full mental focus on, we had to do a crowdsourcing campaign, we had to do these events, we put shows on at the Ford and What and the George Theater to help raise awareness and funds and pre-sales, and no way I could have done that.
Yeah.
I would have pissed people off. I could have finished shooting the work.
Was that kind of one of the issues you had? Like, would you, like, when you were drinking, would you, like, run your mouth or?
No, I
Like,
didn't
piss
have
people
that many
off,
people
or?
coming up to me saying that I pissed anyway. And when I was one of those, when I got sober, people were like, "What do you mean you got a problem?"
Yeah, yeah. Like, I feel like a lot of people said that about, like, BJ Barnum, because he never got too out of control from American
I mean,
Quarter.
I was telling a story earlier about a night where I was out of control.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
Jay earlier. So there were moments, but mostly the only person that noticed was my wife. And Beth was done with my drinking. And I'm one of those people that I'm so grateful that I had that moment where I had to quit, because if I was a part-time drinker, I wouldn't have what I have. I wouldn't have the focus that I have. I wouldn't have the work that I have. Like, I love this sobriety thing. I'm not one of those, we're talking about it now, but I never really talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. When I asked you, and I appreciate you talking about it.
But it's part of it. It was funny. We did a talk here at the gallery 2 nights ago with Terry Allen and Jim Shaw, and I mentioned the drinking part and some of the stories, because there were a couple of photographs that I showed in the slideshow that the negatives were lost. So it was like, how did you lose these negatives? I was like, there's this whole thing there.
Yeah.
My wife reminded me she pointed out after the talk that I never told the room that I was sober, which is funny. But I think they all know me, so I think everybody knows.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
So it has come up a couple of times. It is a big part of my story. And I do know that the 2 books wouldn't have happened. And then the India project that I'm working on, that book, which is hopefully the 3rd book, that one definitely wouldn't have happened.
What
There's
kind
no
of
chance
brought
I'd
you
be
back?
then, so none of it would have happened.
Fair. What was the inspiration to bringing you back to India? Was it because of your earlier experiences there?
Yeah, like it was just like, I've been obsessed with it since I first went. And Beth and I met because of India. She bought the first print that I made after I came back. It inspired her to go to India. And then we met like the day before she left to go on that trip because of this photograph.
Cool.
So India's been a big part of my story in my life, and I'm obsessed on the images. But like now it's been 2 years since I had gone back. So it's been 27 years since that first trip. But like on the 20th anniversary, I started going back through the negatives for the first time. And I've said now I know what it means when the Beatles like remaster a record.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel it now. Paul can't resist it because you have skills that your younger self didn't have. So
I've even gone back and remastered a couple of early episodes.
yeah. So I did an exhibition of the India work on the 20th anniversary of that trip, and the work had never looked as good. And negatives that had never been printable all of a sudden looked fantastic. And the story was shown complete for the first time of what I had done, specifically in Varanasi, India, or Benares, however you want to call it. But it was at that show, which was at Athica, Few Doors Down, where I showed that India work, and a young person came in, and I wanted to go back. I just dreamed of going back, but I never really thought I would be able to, just because family and our busy life and
Yeah.
our bills and how do you get away? And again, you don't get to be 28 and run off to the other side of the planet for 4 months at 55. But on that 20th, that anniversary of the show of the 20th anniversary show, I just screwed that sentence up. How to say that? The 20th anniversary show at Athica.
Yeah.
A young guy from Varanasi came into the gallery with his girlfriend, and they spent about an hour walking down this really long wall, looking at all the photographs of this ancient city. And when he gets to the back, I introduce myself, and he tells me he's from Varanasi. He's the same age as the kids in the photographs, that he had worn that uniform to school. He had that same haircut, and have you been back? And I was like, I would love to go back. And he goes, if you go back, the very first person you meet is going to take you by the hand and take you to all their houses. And he tells you, it's like looking at pictures of my childhood, but there are no photographs of my childhood. So I knew right then, this was now 7 years ago, I knew right then that I had to go back.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to go back. And it became a massive like obsession, but there was no window. My kids were in middle school and early high school. But I remember at some point at that time period, I looked at the calendar and I was like, okay, 25th anniversary. And I did the math and I looked and I was like, Frances will have graduated high school. She'll be in college. Josie will be driving. There might be yoga. And this year is our 25th wedding anniversary. And last year was our 25th dating anniversary. So 2 years ago, it was just our 22nd, 23rd anniversaries. So like, it's not a big anniversary. The kids are the right age. That's almost 2 years out. And I was like, there's a window. November, it's the 25th anniversary of this trip. And I joked about it with Beth, and I was like, I gotta go. And she's like, you can't go to India. What are you thinking? It's like, how you gonna pull that off? And then one day, earlier that year, the second trip, I was looking at plane tickets, and I was like, hey Beth, my Sky Miles, I can get a ticket for $160 to India right now. Okay, just do it. Just do it. And I bought it right then. I was like, all right, I'm going.
Don't tell me twice.
Yeah. And the funniest part, I was supposed to go for like 10 days. And then we were on a walk one night, and I was like, I'm going to be there. And she goes, why don't you go, if you want, you can stay 2 weeks, or I don't know how long she said. And then we get back to the house, and she goes back to the bedroom, and I go back out in the backyard and call Delta. And I'm out there for like 45 minutes. And I come in, she goes, what are you doing? I was like, I just extended the trip. I'm staying for 3 weeks. I just talked about that like 10 minutes ago. Yeah. And then she really loved the fact that once I was there, I called and said I'm staying another week. So I spent a month on that second trip. There's the train.
Yeah.
Yeah, people can't hear it. There's the train.
They'll probably, I can add a little bit of audio from the room mic if I need to.
Okay.
Yeah, it came by when I was talking to Francis too.
This is a good one. Look at all this graffiti on this one.
I think the one that came by when I was talking to Francis was going the other direction.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the same one. It's just coming back
It's
months
fine.
later.
It's just circling. It's going to circle. You're stare at it. So I don't know. So I made it back to Varanasi, India on the 25th, literally the 24th anniversary of the first trip, like on the same day, 25 years later, right? And the first trip, it took me months to travel through India, and I got to this ancient city. And then on this last trip, I flew to Mumbai, and then 2 days later, flew to Varanasi. And so did really get acclimated to India, which is, and it wasn't as crazy as it was the first time, because I had cell phones, I'm texting and calling my family and friends while I'm there, and I'm watching my taxi on Google Maps. And it's a different experience than it was the first time. But anyway, so I fly into Varanasi, which is like literally the oldest city on the earth, and I go down to the Ganges River. I checked in my hotel, walk down to the river, just take a peek, and I go over to what they call the burning god, the Manakanta god. It's where they cremate the bodies. The gods are steps down to the river. And it's where it's the place where they cremate the bodies of the Ganges. It's like the oldest place on the planet. The earliest humans started burning bodies that you find in the spot. And close to the most sacred place in the country. Sacred place in the universe. Okay. And I'm super reluctant to I'm not going to go up in it everything. Just at a distance. I'm just going to take a peek at this place. And it was a big deal 25 years ago to see it. And I wrote about it then, and I have a description of a photograph that I didn't make the first trip. That's something I saw, and I wish I could have photographed fireworks going off over this burning god with human funeral pyres and fireworks exploding on Diwali, the Indian New Year. It's the first time I'd seen it in 1998. So I'm going back for Diwali, be there 25 years later for this holiday. And I walk down to just take a peek at it, and this guy comes up, and he wants to be my tour guide, and he just starts hustling me, like pulling me in. And he's like, "Come follow me, I'll take you a tour." And I'm like, dude, I just got here. I've been literally in India for 48 hours, and I've been in the city for 30 minutes. And it's sunsetting, it's getting dark, and he just keeps pulling me in, and I'm like super reluctant to go walking through all these funeral pyres. And next thing I know, I'm with him, and we're just walking right through the middle of it, and he shows me all the stuff that they were showing the tourists. And next thing, we're up on the top where there's fire burning behind us, and we're looking up off this balcony over all the fires and the river, and looking down the Ganges and the whole stretch of the city. And he's just really hustling me as a tour guide, starting to tell me that I can take pictures if I want to, but I know he's going to tell me I have to pay if I do it. And I'm like, man, I just got here. And he's really pushing me hard. Like, he's just really working me. And I'm like, man, I just got here. And then I've been here before. And he's like, oh. And I started telling the story, and I told him about how my wife bought this photograph from the city, and that's how we met, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling him this whole thing. And I pulled my phone out, and I started to show him the photographs, and his face changed 100%. He just went from trying to hustle me to how can I help you? And he sees the photograph and he recognizes the city. You can see. And then I go to the next one. He goes, I went to school with her. And he's just frozen. He goes, I know her. And then he goes to the next one, and it's a photograph of a man holding a baby. And he's like, that's him. The baby is a man who's delivering firewood. His job was to carry firewood at the burning. And then he's like, that's Vicky. And Vicky was the only name I knew from the first trip, and he was a 14-year-old kid in that first trip. And now he's 40. And he goes, that's Vicky. And I'm like, okay, you're legit. That's Vicky. That is Vicky. I remember his name. And then he's like, that's Ramesh. The store's right there. I'm like, I know. It's got to be right around the corner. I was like, is it still there? He goes, yeah, it's still there. So, it became this. Right then, my phone rings, and this is how different it is. I'm like in the ancient world. Right. She calls, and I answer, and she's like, how's it going? I just broke into tears. I'm just like, holy shit. Like, everything I was hoping was happening. And the next morning, he met me back there. It's a longer story, but he met me back there, and the whole crowd of people followed me to the store to meet Ramesh, and the whole neighborhood gathered around. I had brought all these 8x10 prints with me, black and white prints from the early days. And there was one photograph of these 3 shop owners, and one of them was Ramesh. And it was a picture that had never been printed. And it was not a picture I thought was important. And about a week before the trip, my buddy Charlie Friedlander, who's a great photography collector, and he was making me open up everything. He's so interested in this. And we opened up this hard drive, and I see that picture. I was like, I should print that one. And that ended up being the picture of these 3 guys of Ramesh. Yeah. And he's just, oh my God. The full neighborhood gathered around looking at these photographs, and they were just like, I got to the point where everywhere I went, people were like, I know who you are. So I just had this got invited in on the deepest level. Like, I would spend my nights for 3 weeks, almost a month, every night just sitting at the burning got watching funeral pyres with the locals and the kids and the older people. Everybody wanted me to hang out with them and take pictures, and I got invited in.
Can you tell me the story of what first took you to that city 27 years ago?
But that's a good story too. Like, it's just fucking, this is the craziest, this is the earth, the planet, it's nuts, like time and space. So I was in India, and I'd been traveling for 3.5 months through India at that point. But maybe a little earlier than that, I was up in the Himalayas, and we had gone to see this musician, the sitar player, and I had not seen live sitar music in India yet. And we see this poster, and there's going to be a concert, so a bunch of us went up to the mountains, and we were up in Dharamsala where the Dalai Lama lives. Mm-hmm. So we head up into this smaller little community to see the sitar concert, and it's sold out, can't get in. And we're like, we're looking through the window, and I have one photograph where I pushed the camera up against the glass and snapped, and you can see the sitar player, and we were just so disappointed that we didn't get in for this concert. And then about a week later, I spent a month in the Himalayas on that trip. So about a week later, I get an invitation from this person I met, and she's like, do you want to come share this room at this ashram I'm at? And I'm like, cool. And I go up, and it turns out it's the tabla player's house, and the sitar player's staying there, Ajit Singh. And they fucking jammed every night in the living room for 5 of us, sometimes 3 of us, sometimes just me, Raul, this Uruguayan expat, and myself, and these 2 guys would just jam for hours. It was the most amazing experience, and had long conversations with them about all of it, and everything, life, and all of it. But Ajit was from Varanasi. It's also known as Kashi. So the oldest name is Kashi. Mm-hmm. The British, I think, called it Benares, and now it's known as Varanasi. But to me, the city's Benares. Like, when I see it, I feel like Benares. So anyway, Ajit was from Benares. And at that point, I was about to head south to Kerala, which is really beautiful, and there's backwaters, and it's really chilled out part of India. And he's like, no trip to India would be complete without going to Benares. He said Benares. It's probably where it locked in. Mm-hmm. And he convinced, and he says, that's where I grew up, you gotta go to Benares. A few days later, a week or 2 later, a few weeks later, I ended up back in Delhi, and I had met this actress at the beginning of my trip. This kind of legendary Indian actress. And that's a whole other long story. But I met some really amazing people in India. I met an actor who's beloved, and through him I met this actress who's Indian Meryl Streep. She's a poet and a photographer, and both of them together started in Satyajit Ray Films, who made Pather Panchale, and one of my favorite Indian films. And So I met these two people in the first week, and then Deepti Novel, the actress, told me that when I got to Delhi, she goes, call Raghu Rai. And Raghu Rai is like India's, one of their two legendary photographers. He's the only one who's still living. And, but I knew his work. I looked at every one of his books before I come to India. So when I get to Delhi, I get invited to go to his house. Fucking crazy. Like, how does that happen? So I go to this man's house, and he doesn't know why I'm there. And he's like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Deepti's friend. And he's like, okay. And he's like, come on in. I'll be back. And his servant comes up, and he asks me if I want breakfast. Or he asks me if I want breakfast. And he tells the servant, so he's got a literally housekeeper, butler kind of guy. And so this guy goes and makes me breakfast, and Raghu Rai, the photographer, disappears. This guy brings me a tray, just a delicious breakfast. I sit by myself in this gorgeous room, this fucking beautiful house, and I eat this tasty breakfast. And then after I'm finished, the photographer shows up, and he goes, so what are you doing here? Not in my house, but in India. Like,
Yeah.
And he pulled out these photography books, and he showed me these photo books, and they were all, I didn't like the work. It wasn't his work. He was showing me these random photo books, and he goes, what do you think it is? I was like, I don't like this work. And he goes, these are all photographers that came here and exploited my people. What are you doing? And like real serious, what are you doing? What's your mission here? What's your goal in India? And I told him that I was looking to see who I would be if I'd been born and raised on the other side of the planet. And I wasn't like at temples photographing people praying. I was looking for people on the streets that like living normal life. Like I was looking to really, that's the answer. Like, who would I be if I'd been born on the other side of the planet? But I wasn't stalking sadhus, and I wasn't stalking religious people, and I wasn't. And I told him that then he changed, and I guess he liked my answer. And then he pulled out a bunch of his prints and let me pick out a print of his that he was gonna give away to something. And he was asking my opinion on some of his prints, which I thought was really cool. And I told him that I was about to switch to color film. I'd gone through 100 rolls of black and white Tri-X film that I brought with me. And I couldn't find Tri-X in India, and all I could find was this like kind of cheap Kodak black and white film, and it was garbage. And I was gonna switch to color. And he just, no, you keep doing what you're doing. And he literally made a phone call, put me in a taxi, and then sent me to his camera store, and they had a block of 20 rolls of Tri-X waiting for me when I got there. And I paid for it, but I felt like I had gotten a blessing from the master. The next morning, I got on a plane and flew to Benares on Ajit's recommendation. I get to Benares, which is one of the most photographed cities in India. I've seen countless photographs of it. All the photographs are basically from a boat of people praying on the river in the sunrise, sun washing across them, pouring water, doing blessings. Almost every photograph is that scene. And I get to Benares, and all of a sudden I'm like speechless. First time in India where I'm like, oh, this is too holy. And I see boatloads of Western tourists, like tourists.
Yeah.
People my current
like I'm a duck boat or something.
People my current age with like telephoto lenses making those photographs. And that's what the thing is in Varanasi, is that sunrise thing. And I was like, what do I do here?
Yeah.
I just told this guy that's not what I'm doing. Clearly, I don't want to do what they're doing. And then I met this other guy who was clearly like an established photographer, and we were having a conversation on the river. And he's telling me about how he had befriended one of the sadhus. And the sadhus are like the holy guys. They're mostly naked, a little bit of loincloth, or the agoris are completely naked, dreadlocks. They're smoking the chillum, like the hashish, and they're the holiest. They're considered the spiritual, the devotees. They've given up everything in their life just to live, and they're taken care of by the community. So he's like, I got invited to one of the sadhu camps. And I was like, that seems weird too. But also I was young, insecure photographer, even though I was killing it at the time with what I think making my best pictures of my life. I was like, this guy's clearly like a pro. It's probably like a National Geographic photographer. He was older. He was clearly was like war-torn, world-torn old photographer. And but they kept telling me in the city that everybody is considered holy. It's such a holy city that everybody that lived there is holy. And I was like walking down the street one morning, and this little girl comes running up to me. It's the third day in the city. I'm maybe this, I don't know, second or third day in the city, and this little girl was like, my name is Rahel, and I'll be your guide. And she just wanted some money, but she it was her neighborhood, so I'd run into her every time I would go out. And then one morning, I'm walking down these narrow streets. There's all these beautiful winding streets, and I had not really been photographing yet. I've been there for 3 days. I hadn't taken a picture. And I was just, fuck, how do you photograph this place? Like, it's
kind of
so holy. Like, it's just the center, and the mythology it is holy. It is the center of the universe. After that current trip, I do believe it's the center of the universe. I've experienced things there that I've never experienced anywhere else. There's a vibration there. But I've been told, like, it's the holiest place. Everybody there is holy. If you die there, you're liberated from samsara. You go to nirvana. It's the place. So I'm like, what's the difference between these devotees, the sadhu, and everybody else? And I'm walking down the street corner, and this guy basically jumps out of this little window stall. He's like, you want to buy a magic stick? And he looked like my buddy Hassan, who's from Morocco, but they had a similar mustache and hair. And I was like, and my buddy Kevin is a magician. And so he got my attention. People had been trying to sell me hash the whole time I was in India. And I smoked a little bit of hash, especially with Ajit and those guys we were smoking up there. And this guy jumps out, and I wouldn't buy it off the street from anybody. He was like, you want to buy a magic stick? I was like, look at my buddy Hassan. So I sit down with him, and they have these little cookies with these little dollops in the middle. And there's this like general store, chai shop, and he's got the cookies, and there's this barber shop over here. And I just end up hanging out on the street corner. And every day I would come by and get a cookie and then just kind of walk. But I don't know at what point I started taking pictures that all of a sudden it just clicked. It was like, oh, I don't need the river. It's these people. And I spent 2 weeks. I spent 2 weeks on that street corner hanging out with the locals, and the kid Vicky, and I didn't know his name, but Ramesh, who is now my brother. And it's a really interesting street corner because it's where all the funeral processions lead going down to the Ganges. So it's right around the corner in the Burning Ghat. So I was just struck by the fact that there's this neighborhood where all these people are hanging out, and it's just regular life. There's stores, there's all this stuff, but every 10, 15 minutes you hear this chant, Ram Satchahe, Ram Satchahe, and a group of people come by carrying a body, and the people on the street don't flinch. And I'm like, wow, death is such a part of their world that they didn't notice it. And my photo of Vicky from back then is this kid with his arm around his buddy. His name is Ram Babu, which I just learned 2 years ago. Ram Babu, and they're looking at me like they're making like little gun hands, standing like this, and there's a funeral walking behind them. And I just love this portrait of these kids because they're just like hamming it up with the camera. There's a funeral right here. So that's what I spent 2 weeks photographing. I had some pictures at the river. There's boatmen. There's one of my all-time favorite photographs. Two of my all-time favorite photographs are boatmen and boats on Ganges. I met both of those people on this last trip.
That's wild.
Totally wild. Yeah, I photographed one boatman in the same boat. There's this one photograph of these two boatmen. They're fishermen. I always call it the boatman, but now I realize, oh, he's fishing in that photo. I didn't realize he was fishing. They're just fishermen. And it's this ancient temple behind them. It's not a temple, but a palace. And found them. And we went out and we staged the photograph. Like, they were so cool. They were like, yeah, let's go out, we'll pose. The old man Kashi is pulling out fishing line. He's pretending he's fishing in the new photograph.
It reminds me of a little bit of a story. So my mom and my stepdad have been married for 19 years now. And they didn't meet until like 24, 25 years ago. But they both grew up down in St. Petersburg. And my mom grew up playing marching band. And they're going through photos, just old photos of themselves from when they were kids. And my mom finds this photo of her in the marching band and in a parade. And in the background, there's a guy like tying his shoe.
Is it your husband?
It's my stepdad.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was like from when they were kids. And
wow.
And yeah.
That's great. Yeah. There's one, I only had one little thing, because I mentioned it earlier, I didn't finish it.
Yeah,
but that
sorry.
sitar player, Ajit, I found him 5 years ago on Facebook. And he lives in Paris, or in France, southern France, with his wife. He met a French woman and eventually married and moved to France. And during lockdown, I would pay to watch some of the sitar concerts online. And and then all of a sudden it became, every time I posted on Facebook, I'd see that Ajit would like my Facebook post. I was like, man, the world is so fucking small. That is so cool. And then 2 years ago, when I started planning the India trip, I told you from Benares. So I messaged him on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm finally going back to India. I'm going to Benares." And he writes back, "I am too." And I said, "When are you going?" And we arrived in the Benares airport an hour apart from each other.
And
He was going back for the first time in 3 years to see his family.
That's crazy.
So I got to have dinner at his house and meet his family.
That's so
It
awesome.
was so awesome. I was hoping for a sitar concert, and they were going to perform for me, but I got dengue fever and didn't get to go back for the third dinner. Of course, I missed out on the concert. But these guys, he and his two brothers grew up, and their father was contemporaries with Ravi Shankar. They grew up with Ravi. They knew him growing up. He was like the master, and his dad played with him. And,
Wow.
But this is the end of the India story. The coolest thing is his brother and his wife were telling me the story about how they met. And we met up in northern India at this tabla player's house, Ashoka. I was like, "That's where I met Ajit." And they were like, "What?" I was like, "That's how Ajit and I know each other, was from Ashoka's house." And that's where his brother met his wife.
That's crazy.
I'm like, "Dude, how small how am I going to know in the place?" What a great, cool thing.
That's wild. The world is really a fucking crazy place.
Yeah. To have it shrink like that, man, it's so cool.
Man, so you mentioned like some of the subtle differences and the big differences in your experience between, and not just because you'd grown, but because the technology and you were in constant contact, all these things had changed.
And now we're in constant contact with them now. We can call them.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other thing what struck me about that too is like how much the field of photography has changed since then too.
Yeah.
Can you just reflect on, that could be a whole hour conversation in itself, but
I think that for me, like, it's the storytelling part that's important now. There's a million photographs being made right this second. And without the story part, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So that's where I got really lucky. I got lucky with Potluck, that there's a story. So it's gotten a like. Like, people still respond to that work because there's a story. If it was just a bunch of pictures, it could be cool.
yeah,
But there's a story. And even Murmur Trestle, for the people that it's a short story, but there's a story around it. And with the India work and the book that I'm working on, there's a story to it. So whether the technology is not a part of it, and other than the fact that 1998 is black and white film, 2023 is color digital, but luckily for me, the technology plays into adding to the texture of the story. So if I had shot color in 98, it wouldn't be as big of a contrast. So luckily Roger Rye gave me black and white film.
yeah.
If I had switched to color, there wouldn't be as much of a contrast. I hadn't really thought of it like that till right now. But luckily he hooked me up with that film. Otherwise the Benares work would have been color. They would have spilled. I would love to see what color would have looked like at the time. But Robbie Ryan has color pictures of Benares in 1998.
Yeah. He gave you that film for a reason, right?
I hope to. I saw that he was teaching a workshop there last year. I was like, oh, I go back and do his work. I think he's like 75 now. The real goal is to get the book to the next level and have him see it.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll be touched by it and get a quote or something.
So where does this all, like, you're working on this next book, do you have goals, or do you just do what you have the tools to do in front of you in the moment?
Both. Right now the goal is there's 3 or 4 books in mind. So the goal is to get a couple of things finished. One, there's some momentum, and that was the best part of getting the second book made. It felt like, oh, now there's a second book, it feels like you get to make books. So like the India one will be the most important one to me if I get it done. And then I have the goal of 40 years of Athens book. I'm at 34 years. Yeah. So 6 years from now, it would be nice to finish that and then maybe move to India or something. So I have that goal. And then there's a project I did with my kids when they were little called Menagerie that Francis and Josie, we all collaborated on these photographs when they were little. So that's a book that we want to make. So the real goal is to get those books finished. And then there's no real expectations or goals or dreams bigger than that. Okay, photography for me at this point is really what I get from it on a daily basis of doing it is the reward. Like I don't see galleries ever really embracing me. I don't really see breaking through to a bigger scene than what I do in Athens. I don't really think I'm going to get called to New York and LA to do capital A art world stuff. I don't really, and I don't care.
Yeah.
The real joy of what I do is what I get to do when the camera comes out and I get to photograph people. I mean, it's fucking amazing that I get to do what I do and get the connections I get with people. So that's the real goal, is to keep that going. So I guess the real goal is to keep the body in shape so I can keep doing that.
Man, you say that. I feel the exact same way about this podcast and sitting down with all these amazing people and getting to connect with
the
them.
verbal version of what I've been describing.
And it's actually really validating to sit here and talk to you about it all. So thank you.
I feel the same way.
You're definitely a kindred spirit, man. I feel like we could talk all day, but I feel like people are going to get bored. So I'm going to let you go here. But is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to mention? Anything that you got coming up that people can pay attention to? I know you found some copies of a book. I don't know if they're all gone already.
Yeah, we did unearth 50 copies of Athens Potluck. I think we're down to 45 copies now of Athens Potluck. So those are available at deedspublishing.com. It's your name. And
Cool.
Those will be the last 50, and then it's out of print. As far as plugging stuff, I just finished 2.5 years of massive effort, and I'm done as of 2 days ago. So there's nothing new coming out. Like, the last 2.5 years have been fucking nuts of like activities and shows and books, and the gallery's taking a hiatus. I'm taking like a big break to just focus on making new pictures and try to get that book done. But yeah, that's like literally it. This is the last thing on the calendar right this second.
I'm glad that you get to have some time to breathe, because it sounds like you need it.
Yeah. It looks like it too, probably.
No, you look great, man. No, seriously.
It's been nuts. Last year was the busiest year of my life, and we thought this year I was going to take off, and then we had 4 exhibitions in the gallery, including my daughter Frances, and then I ended up doing 2 talks in the last month, and it's we're done. I need a break.
Thanks for being here, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
I'll have links to where people can buy your book and prints and all the things.
Yeah, I would just say check out, follow my Instagram, see what I'm working on.
What would you say to somebody out there that wants to do photography but feels it's so flooded? I think the story aspect that you were talking about earlier is really important. But is there anything else that you'd say to a young photographer or aspiring photographer?
Yeah, figure out how to tell the story. Find something personal, make it personal, tell a story, connect with people. As far as like making a living doing it, who knows how any of that's going to go for any of us in any field over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Exactly.
We're in brave new world territory.
I might be documenting the end of the world right here.
Yeah,
Make this whole conversation. No, I think with all the stuff that's coming up, the way the world's changing, anything that has to do with like real human connection and real craft will shine. So I feel so confident for Frances right now.
Yeah. No, I agree. I hope we get to do a quick update with her, because I'd love to talk to her about her show. But, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, right on.
I hope you enjoyed my talk with Jason. Man, I think that was something really I was lucky to be part of. I really appreciated him opening up to me. I haven't gotten a chance to catch up with Frances yet, but I'll be at Flicker Bar on Tuesday, the 18th, and I think we're going to catch up then. I hope all y'all come out in the Athens area, come see some stand-up comedy. I'll be there with Lanny Farmer. Thanks for listening, y'all. Hit that subscribe button.